Hello, welcome everyone to React Penang number 7. Okay, again, welcome everyone to React Penang Meetup number 7. So this is our first meetup for 2022, and also the first meetup since basically the pandemic started up, our physical meetup. So back in the Okay, 2 years ago, we started this meetup in the idea of bringing together React developers from Penang, to share ideas among us and share experience among us, to discuss about what we learned about React, what we found about React, and what are the stuff that is interesting about React. So that's basically behind the core of this meetup itself. So then we managed to run 2 meetups before the pandemic started on 2019. Then after pandemic started, then we unfortunately have to go to online, and then we run there are 4 online sessions as well in 2020, and unfortunately we do a pause on 2021 for the whole year. So hopefully this will be a good start for React Penang. This will be the first meetup for 2022, and we don't have to wait long for the 8th meetup of React Penang. All right. So again, I want to welcome everyone to be here. So before we begin, I have a few housekeeping want to everyone, especially those that attended the meetup physically, right? So there are a few housekeeping. If you are new to this space, so there's drinkable water at the back, special water, and then the washroom is on the other side. So you have to do a U-shaped turn, right, to go to the other side. And then there is a snack and coffee. Please don't touch it. It's not ours. So don't even touch it. That is for the space, okay? So it's not ours. So make sure you don't eat any of the stuff there. All right. So so throughout this meetup, right? This is a few hours meetup. We have 3 speakers. Okay. Okay. Before that, right? We have a React Penang group, Facebook group. If you're not joined, you can join here. So the link is here, right? So hopefully all of you are in the group, especially those in online as well. Then before I start, I want to thank to our supporting partner, Digital Penang, for providing this space for us to run meetup. So yeah, so they are our supporting partners, and we are grateful that they give us this space to able to run this meetup, and hopefully that in the future we can cooperate again. All right. Now again, if you're not in this group, you can join our React Penang group, okay, through this Facebook group. So our house rules is pretty simple. Just be honest and be yourself. So no fake accounts, all right? So we don't like company's account or fake accounts. We like the account with your face in it. So just be honest and then be yourself, and then that's done, all right? Then of course you have to be respectful and be kind to others as well. So and then you might have to answer questions before you can join. So everyone have to answer the question. If you don't answer the questions, we won't let you join, all right? Because we don't know whether you are bot or a real person, okay? So that's for our group. Then about this React Penang meetup, right? We build this as a community, right? So all of us here, all of us, so-called the organizer here are developers themselves. So we are just here so that we want to learn together as React. That's why we found this meetup and this community. So if you want to join, let's say you're interested to host, just let us know. We will help you with all the nitty-gritty about the venue, all the stuff, and you can run React Penang meetup on your own as well. We will try to support you and all you can. So of course, if you want to give talks, then we're welcome as well. Then just let us know what you want to talk about. Then we will arrange. All right. So another thing that I think I missed out is try to maintain SOP as much as possible. Try to maintain social distancing, keep your mask on at all times. Okay. And then yeah, because we don't want to end up in the wrong side of the law, okay? So, and then lastly, if your company is hiring, you're looking for React developers, then you can talk to us, all right? Because we might have some connection, might. Okay, so we'll try our best to recommend, but no guarantees. But if you're looking for a job, you're in the right place because I know a lot of companies are hiring React developers. Okay, so if you're interested in for a job, please let us know because personally, I know plenty of companies try to hire React developer and couldn't find in Penang. So, so if you think you have the skill to back it up, let us know, and we'll try to give you like some recommendation. Okay. So the agenda for today is pretty simple. So we have three speakers. The first one is myself. So I'm going to talk about speed up your React development with GitHub Copilot. So then the second speaker is Mohit Kumar. So he will be, unfortunately, he can't attend the meetup today. So he will be live stream from another place. So he will be talking about Fabric, React Native rendering system. And Mohit is from Segwit, so he's a CTO and co-founder of Segwit as well. Okay. And then the third one, the third topic that we have, the third speaker that we have is Sammy, and he's a senior developer from Hummingbird. Okay, he's actually all the way from Switzerland itself. Okay, it's not from around here. And then I think it's his session will be on 4 p.m. because we will have time zone issue, and then he will be talking about front-end developer experience with GraphQL. So just a little bit about the other two speakers, right? Other than myself, myself is a freelance developer, so I do React stuff. Later on in my presentation, I will talk about a little bit about it. Segway is, I believe, is an agency in KL, based in KL. So they are doing web development, mobile development. So from what I heard, it's like they do a lot of React native mobile apps as well. Okay, and then Hummingbird, it's a Silicon Valley startup. Yeah, Silicon Valley startup. So it happened to be one of my co-organizer of React Penang. Is also employee of Hummingbird. So if you're interested to know how a Malaysian, a Penang-born, Penang Lang, able to land himself in a job in Silicon Valley startup, talk to him later on. All right, that's the advantage for you guys who attended physically in this meetup today. Okay, those in online, sorry. Okay, so that is for the agenda for today, just the big joke. Okay, so for my presentations, I already recorded beforehand purely because I do a lot, throughout the presentation, there's a lot of coding stuff. So it will be difficult to code and then present at the same time with this mic on my hand as well, right? So that's why I pre-record the whole session yesterday. And also for convenience to those who view online so that we can give you some better quality instead of, streaming from the mic from them, all right? So if we are okay, good. Okay, so let's play the video.
Online, and nowadays I've Hello everyone, my name is Nathan. So in this session, I'm going to talk about how to speed up your React development with GitHub Copilot. Okay, so this is the topic for today. And before I begin, I would like to first introduce myself. So my name is Nathan Onn. I'm a self-taught freelance developer. So I started my career as a WordPress developer, building WordPress plugins and themes and sell it online. And nowadays I focus more of my times on developing exciting web projects using some of the latest web technologies such as React.js, Firebase, and Node.js, and etc. So if you want to learn about my portfolio or what I do, right, for living, you can actually visit my website in here, all right, www.nathanonn.com. Okay, so let us begin with today's topic. Now, okay, before we begin, we have to answer this question, right? What is GitHub Copilot? So GitHub Copilot, right, is powered by OpenAI Codex. So it's an artificial intelligence that helps you write codes faster with less work, all right? So Copilot draw context from the code you type and give you a proper code suggestions. So Copilot was trained on publicly available source code and natural language so that it understands both programming and human language. So what can GitHub Copilot do? The first thing first is code completions. In other words, is like auto completes your code. So in here, I have a very simple button component. So if I want to let Copilot to write codes for me, all I can do is I just click my icon in here, click my cursor in here, and then I press tab. And then straight away, you will see that Copilot have given me a suggestions based on what I just typed in here, okay? So in this case, it's just a HTML button tag with a click me as a label, right? And then a close HTML tag, okay? So as you can see, when I hover over the code, there will be a few options available. So I can actually cycle through the suggestions. If I click next, then it will give me another suggestions, but it's quite similar with the previous one. So if I go back previous, then it will go back to the previous suggestions, all right? So I can just cycle through a few one, but you can notice that there isn't much changes, because part of the reason is because based on what Copilots understand is, these components should be only return back the HTML button tag, all right? So to accept these suggestions, I can actually click accept in here, or I just click tab, okay? So just like that, my button component has been created by Copilot, okay? So this is one way to do code completions. Another way is I can actually do something like this, like if I type out constant 3 buttons, right? And then if I do return, then I put a div, then you will notice that it will straight away recognize that there's a 3 button in here, right? So straight away it recognize this button component. So if I do tab again, then it will suggest another button component. Then it will suggest another button component. Then the last one, because here I write it out 3 buttons, then it will know that I should stop after the 3. I have 3 buttons component in my code, right? So that's why that it suggests this div closing tag. Okay. So if I save and then I copy this one and then I put it in here, and then if I save again, so if I open up my browser, this is what I'm seeing. All right, 3 buttons together. So you can see that Copilot is actually taking context from our code. So for example, let's say that I make it a little bit more complex, like I put use state in here, and then I change this into a property. So let's put label in here, and then props, and okay. So in this case, the label will be coming from the props. So if I change this again, right, if I delete this one, then let's see what will the Copilot suggest. So straight away, you will see that this is what the Copilot suggested. All right, so if we don't like this suggestion, then we can click next, and then next again, and then next again, until we found what we want, right? So okay, so let's stick with this one. And then I'll just going to press tab to continue. Then once I save, right, and I should see this in my browser. But if I click plus or even a minus or reset, nothing will happen. So that is because there's no event handler in here. So that's why that whenever we click the buttons, it doesn't really, have any effects. So what we can do is, if I add an on-click handler in here, and then I attach this on-click handler to the one in the button, right? Then right now, Copilot should be able to know that there was an event handler in this button component. So if I remove everything again, then I'll go back in here, then it will give me suggestions. Then you can see that in this case, it will give me an event handler, right? So I'll just click tab, and then I'll save. Then if I go back to my browser and I click plus, you notice that the counter is increased and decrease and reset. Okay, so this is how Copilot do with code completions. It just complete your code for you. All right. So other than code completions, so another way is from comment to code. So the most simple one is you just type in the comments. So in this case, I just type in create a button components, and then Copilot will give me the code that I need. All right. So let us demo this as well. So let's say that I have this comment in here, create 2 buttons to increment and decrement the counter. Then all I need is, I'll just tap in, and then it will give me the suggestions, right? So I can actually look at it. Okay, I think it's good. So I just press tab to accept it. All right, so if I click save, then in my browser, I will be seeing this, right? If I click plus, it will increase, then click minus, it will decrease. So as I mentioned before, right, the way Copilot works is actually they're taking context based on what you type, right? So if let's say I remove this use state, and then I remove everything in here, the Copilot just given me, and then you can see that it will give me a different suggestions. So let's see about how this suggestion different from the previous one. All right. So if I click OK, then I'll just keep pressing tab and then enter. Oops. All right, and then okay. So it is quite similar with the previous one, but you will notice that there's a difference, right? This is actually a stateless component. There's no state in here. That's because I already removed the use state from the library. So copilots know that if there's no use state, then they will try to figure out a solutions that doesn't require you to use state. Okay, so that's why that on this second example, even though I'm using the same command line, right? I'm using the same command code. I'm using the same command text, right? But this time it will give me a suggestions that is stateless. There's no state in there. So that's how it's a difference. But of course, if let's say if I save this one in my browser, I'll be seeing only these two. But then if I click it, there's nothing will happen because there was no state. Because there's no state management. All right. So which means, right, the context is very important. Okay. So let's say if I put an additional two more, if I use state and then I put use memo, right? Then let's see what Copilots give me this time. Okay. So I will remove everything. Then okay, so it will just give me. So this is the suggestion that Copilot give me. So if I scroll down, you see that there will be a use memo in here. That's because so whatever I include at the top, Copilot will try to use it. So that's why that it will be use it in here. Okay, for the to handle the reset, right? So if I click tab and then I save, and in my browser I will have this 4 buttons right now. So to increase, to decrease, reset, and also have this reset with memo. Okay, so that's how it works. And it also works with like a third-party library, right? So let me show you. So in this case, I'm going to use a material UI button, right? So this is the line. So I'm going to remove my button component. I'll use the material one. So I press tab again, then I'll let Copilot to give me suggestions. So straight away you can see that it will use this material UI like buttons to do that. So if I click tab and then I save, then in the browser you will notice that this is the button from material UI. Okay, so it works as well, right, with third-party library, right? So as I mentioned before, the context is very important when you use Copilot. Whatever you feed on the top of your code, it will be used to generate the codes for you. Okay, so make sure you include the correct context for Copilots so that they can give you the most accurate code for you. So other than comment to codes, the next one is from function names to code. Okay, so all I need is I give the function names, right, and then Copilot will generate the code for me. Okay, so this is an example. So in here I have code for filtering list. So in our browser, this is what we're gonna see, right? There will be a search input, and then there will be a list of names. So if I type anything in here, then it's supposed to be filter up the keywords and then leave only the one. So if I type John in here, right, I'm supposed to be only have John in here. There's no filtering in here yet. That's because I haven't done the functions, right, for filtering. So I'm gonna let Copilot to do it for me. So this is my code, right? So if I scroll down to the bottom, I have these functions called search list by name, email, right? So at the moment, I just return back the list that is passing down. So that's why there's nothing happened yet, right? So if I delete this one, and then I click tab, then you'll notice that straight away, Copilot will suggest functions to filter lists, right? So I'm gonna accept this one, and then I'm gonna save. Then in my browser, you can see straight away, right? The keyword I typed just now will straight away filter up the list, right? So if I delete this one, if I put Jane, then it will be Jane. Then if I put Jack, then it will be Jack, right? If I put JA only, then it will return Jane and Jack. This is another capability of Copilot. So all you need is you type out the function's name, right? Then it will, based on the function's name, to give you a suggestion. So here's another example. So in this case, instead of filter by list, we'll do a sort by list, right? Sorting by list. So if I go to my browser, this is what I see. So I can actually sort by name and email. Okay, so I have two options, but at the moment, whenever I click this selector, right, nothing will happen yet. Okay, that's because again, I didn't write the code, the functions to do the sorting. So I will let Copilot do that for me. So let me go to code. So this is the one, this is the functions that I need to write, right? So I just delete the default one. I click that and for me, okay? So this is the sorting that can be done. So right now I'm in my browser, right? You can see that I select sort by email, right? Then straight away you can see that the email is sort by email, right? From this one, it starts with A and then G and then J, right? So if I change to name, it will change to sort by name. And then if I do email, it will change back, okay? So this is another capability of Copilot, right? All you need is you type in the function's name, and then it will base on the function name as well as the code you type right in here to give you a proper suggestions. And most of the time, if as long as your context is correct, right, you're given Copilot enough context, meaning that there's enough code to support what you're trying to do, then most of the time, Copilot will give you the correct codes. Next, we'll look at 7 ways Copilot can speed up your React development. So the first one is it makes much more easy to use third-party module. So what do I mean by that, right? So in here, I have the code for the user list, right? So if I look at our browser, this is what we get, right? The name, the email, and then follow a second username and second user email and third one, right? So this is the list in here. And then if we look at our code, what we're gonna do is whenever I type something in this input box, right? And then it will straight away update the list in here, okay? Our list state in here. So to do the update, right, I'm going to use this third-party library. It's called Immutability Helper, right? So if you are in React, if you do React development, I'm sure you are familiar with this library because it is quite popular, right? But the thing about this library, right, sometimes it might be a little bit difficult to be understand, right? For you to understand what it means, especially if like you are just beginning to learn React or you just first exposed to this library, right? So what normally people do is they have to go through the documentations and then to read everything. So before they can understand how to use this module, right? But with funny enough, right, with Copilots, you can actually skip the whole process of reading the documentation because all I need to do is, right, ta-da, right, it will straight away give me suggestions based on the whatever I have put on the top, right? So you can see that it used these update functions from the library itself. So then all I need is just click tab, and then if I save, then right now if I click something in here, you can see that I already able to update my list state, right? Same for email as well. Then for second user and the third user. So it makes our life much more easy, right, when we work with a third-party module, right? So yes, in this case, I don't have to read a lot of codes or documentation just to understand how to use that particular module, okay? So let's say I want to add a remove button, right? What I can do is I just paste my code in here, and then right in here, I create another functions. So I'm going to copy paste the one in here, right, to here. Then it should be able to give me the same suggestions, but this time is to remove the item from the list. Okay, so it's done. Then I save. So you can see that sometimes Copilot does give you an error. Okay, it doesn't always give you the correct code. So this is the best example. So you will notice that, right? This is a button, right? And then we pass in the index as argument, and then in here we return it as argument. But because it's a button, then we are supposed to include the button event handler in that, right? So that's why that here you notice that it's has an error, right? So what I can do is I'll just correct the code that given by Copilot. So this is what happened with Copilot as well sometimes, because it doesn't always give you the correct code. So sometimes you might still need to use your own developer or logics. So once we fix the code, right, then we will save. Then we have to refresh to see the new one. Okay, so right now I have this delete button edited, right? So if I click this delete button in here, it's supposed to delete John from the list, right? So you see, so if I click this one, Seth will be deleted. Then if I delete this one, click this one, Mike will be deleted as well. Okay, so that is how Copilots help you working with a third-party module. Now let's just look at another library. So this one is React hook form, right? So this is another very popular library as well for people to use it to write forms, right? So what I can do is all I need to do is I include this one, so I don't even have to read the documentation about how to use it, right? So all I need to do is I just click tab and then it will give me the suggestions. Now other than using tab, right, there's another way of giving full suggestions. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up the Copilot synthesizing solutions, right? So in here it will give me much more complete suggestion instead of just inline codes, right? So I will just use the first one. So normally if let's say I put it in full screen, it will give me a few more suggestions. It will, in this case it will be 10 solutions. So this is the first one, right? Then if I scroll out, there's another one, then another one, and another one, and then so on and so on and so on and so on, right? There are 10 total. So sometimes the suggestions might look similar, but sometimes it's not. It will be, you know, completely out of range. So you can actually look through here to find the one that you want. So I'm just going to go with the first one. Okay, then let me resize it, and then so I'm gonna save. And then in here, you notice that my browser, nothing is showing. So that is because the code suggested, right, is actually wrong. So if I go to my browser, right, if I open up my console, right, you will notice that there's this path split is not a functions error. So if I copy this error message and I Google it, and this is what I found in Stack Overflow. So if I scroll down, right, so you can see that they are actually saying that the reason I'm getting this error is because the code Copilot use is for version 6, but in version 7, the one that I install in my React projects, right, the code is different, right, because there's a breaking change update from 6 to 7, right? But that is because Copilot was trained on the version 6 data. So that's why that it couldn't give you a version 7 suggestions. That's why that sometimes you might have to be clever when you're using Copilot, because you have to be realized that data that they are trained, that this AI is trained on, are based on the data from the past, right? So sometimes you know, software changes, right, and then they updated, and then there are some breaking change. So those breaking change won't be able to, you know, incorporate into the AI data. That's why that it will still suggest you the old set of solutions instead of the newer one. So in this case, we have to be clever. So normally what I do is I just search by the error code, and normally I will find the answer in Stack Overflow, and then I just only have to customize it. So in this case is because I believe you will have to do it this way. So it's no longer using this ref, right? No longer using ref argument. We have to do it this way, right? So I'm going to change it to match the version 4 code. So what I can do is I will have to this part, right? This ref is no longer needed. So I'm just going to delete all together, and then I'm going to put this destructuring component. Then okay, so here I'll have to put name, and then this one is for email, and then this one is for password, right? Then I click, and then this one is not changed yet because there was another issue. There's another breaking change coming from version 6 to 7, which is this one, right? So in version 7, it should be in this format, okay? Then once I click save, then you notice that it's done, right? So I have name, I have email, I have my password, and then I can submit query. So let's say John at Gmail, and then password is password. Then if I submit, but nothing happens because it's just to console log, okay? This is how you use Copilot to help you integrate third-party library into your code much more faster, right? But you have to be aware of sometimes there's an update to the library itself, and some of the codes might no longer be used. So you have to also keep in mind that copilots use data from the past. So sometimes there are updates and then it couldn't keep up with that, right? So you have to be clever on that and then look at where is the problem you have and then just make changes from there, right? So the second way, it's a really interesting one, is to convert class component to functional component. So let's say that you have this class component in here, right? That you have maybe have written in the past, and now right now you want to convert it to functional component, okay? So what you can do is, this is actually very powerful as well. So I'm going to type convert class component above to functional components. You can see that Copilot actually suggests the text itself for me, right? So I'm going to open up with this, and then I'll just let it give me the suggestion. Okay, so you can see the suggestion is given is exactly the same as the above one, right? The only difference is this time it's a functional component. So I'm just gonna tap, and then now that it's done, right? Then you can see that, right? They even copy the class itself, right? So if let's say I go up to the top, and if let's say I don't want to use this as app, I use this as probably main, then if I remove this one, remove everything again that Copilot suggests to me, and let them resuggest, right? You notice that here it will it will use everything that is from the above and then reuse it in this functional component, okay? So if I click tab, then all I need to do is I remove my class, because right now I already have my functional component, so I can use this to remove it. So this will be very useful, right? If you have a lot of legacy code that you write in class component, and then right now you want to convert it to functional component, then you can do this one by one. Of course, the example I've given is a very simple one, so it's much more easy to do. But if let's say you have a very complex class component whereby you have like many lines of code, then it might probably take times for Copilot to actually convert it one by one. Okay, so but you can actually experiment with it, and this is the power of the Copilot. Next is I want to show you how to use Copilot to convert HTML and CSS to a React component. So let's say that this is the HTML code that you want to convert into a React component. So all I can do is I use so I'll type in the command convert HTML above to React component. Okay, then I'll begin it for the Copilot. So as you can see that Copilot give me a actually very good example, right? They even include a use state in here, right? Part of the reason is because I include use state and on the above, so that's why that is straight away give me a suggestion whereby I can have a count as the state, right? So I'm gonna accept this suggestion and then I'm gonna click save, and then this is what I get, right? If I click plus, minus, right? So if I change this one, right, this app to main, then I delete everything, then restart again, then you can see that it will still follow the example from the above to here, right? So if I change this one to the bottom, that's like that, and then you can see that here it will change as well. Okay, so this is another powerful example of Copilot. Of course, whenever you save, make sure you remove this one, otherwise you get error in your app, although it doesn't show in here, right? So this is how you convert HTML to React component. So the fourth way that Copilot can help you speed up your React development is to write comments. So let's say that we have a code in here, right? And I want to add comments to my code. So what I can do is, let's say I want to add comments to these functions, right? And what I can do is I just put this one and then this. Normally I will start with some simple words so that Copilot can continue it. Okay, so sometimes it doesn't give you the correct one. So let's see, use memo is a React hook that catches the result of a function. That's true as well, but I will probably try to explain what is this function for, right? So I'm just going to do functions. This function is memorize, so that it can run when the sort by value change. Okay, so this is much more complete one. So we can do it this way, all right? Then if let's say I have this one, right? So let's say I have this part in here, and I want to write some comment based on whatever in here, whatever code in here, right? Then what I can do is I will probably have to put it into another line so that Copilot know how to complete it. So let's retype this here. Here, okay, you can see that here we are mapping over the filtered list and returning a list item for each items in the list. Okay, so that's the correct comments, right? Then let's say I want to add another comment for these functions. So I'm doing it this way, and then okay, so this function takes in a list and sort by value and return a sorted list. Okay, exactly what I want, right? So this is how you add comment to your code using Copilot. So next, the fifth way that will help you speed up your React development using Copilot is the best one, right? Write unit tests, okay? So let's say that this is the code that we have and we want to write a unit test for this code, right? So what I can do is I will have to include the library first. So this is the library that we're going to include, and then all I need to do is I'll just use command test the increment button. Oops. Okay. Then you notice that it straight away give me the suggestion that I need to do for unit testing, right? Okay. Alright. I think it's good. Then of course I can do for the decrement as well. And that's so we can see that how easy is it, right, to write a unit test using Copilot. Okay. Now that's done. So once this is done, of course, normally we don't store unit test code in the code itself, right? We use it in a separate file. We just copy everything, and then I'll open up my unit test file. Right, then I'm gonna paste my code in here. So of course I'm gonna import my component in here, right? So in order for it to function properly, okay? So all I need to do is bring up the terminal and then do the unit testing from there, right? So this is how you write unit tests using Copilot itself. Next, it's the regular expression generations, right? So I don't know about you, even to me, right, until today, right, I still can't, although I have like years of experience as a programmer, but I still can't wrap my head around these regular expressions, because sometimes, like for example, I want to do regular expression check on, like for example, whether it's an email or whether it's a URL, right? So sometimes I still have issue of understanding how does it work. But with Copilot, you don't even have to understand it at all. You just let Copilot do this code generation for you, okay? So this is what I'm going to show you right now. So here I have a very simple input whereby I allow user to type in values in here, and then it will check whether the value entered is an email or not. So let's say if I type email.gmail, right, then so we're supposed to check the value, and then if it's an email, it will return yes, and then if it's not, then we return no. So in our case, it will return no because part of the reason because this function is always return false. So we are going to add our regular expressions in here, okay? So to check on the value entered on the input itself. So what I can do is I can just remove this one. Then I'll type in the command of check if value is an email. Okay, so we can just use the example, and then I'll return. Okay, so I'll accept this one. Then you can see straight away from nope it changed to yes, right? So let's say I delete the @gmail.com, then it will straight away change to nope. So this is a very quick way for you to write regular expressions using Copilot. Of course, you can do more. If let's say that I want to check for whether it's a URL or not, right? Is this a URL? Then I'll leave this one as if. Then I change this to is the value website URL, right? Then I'll remove this one. Then I'll let Copilot suggest the regular expression for me, okay? So then this is the one I'm going to use. I'm going to save. Then is it a URL? Of course it's not, right? Because this is just an email. So but if I type in a correct one, like for example https www.google.com, .com. Straight away, you can see it changed to yes, right? So this is the power of Copilot in writing regular expressions. Now for the last one, I want to show you something very interesting, and it is called one comment to rule them all. So what do I mean by that, right? So in here, I have a line of comments that indicate to Copilot that I want to do a to-do list app that allow user to add, edit, and delete to-do list item. Okay, so I'll start with import React and then the use case, and then let the Copilot to complete everything from the start from finish. Okay, so this is what we can do, and I'm going to so this is import style sheet. Okay, you can see that they actually give you a suggestion of the React Native app, right? So this is not what we want. So I'm going to remove everything, and then to make sure that they give me a normal web app to-do list. So I'm going to start with a constant app, right? Then the rest I'll let the Copilot to decide. Okay, I think so far so good, right? And last one, export, done, save. Okay, to do is not defined, to do form is not defined, so I have to create that for the component as well. So I'll create a to do component, and then I'll let the Copilot to finish it up. All right, and div okay, this is done. Then I need to create another one for to do form. To do form. Let me close this one first. Then it will give me a much more complete suggestions. Okay, so done, save, done. Right. So right now I have a workable to-do list. Okay. So if let's say I can put teach React. See, it added it, right? So if I completed the task, all I need to do is I click complete, then it will strike through. Then if I want to remove the task, then I just click it is remove. So you can see the power of it, right? When I just started this line of code, I started with a blank page with just a line of comment that describe what I'm trying to do, and then I'm just going to guide the Copilot to do what I intended to do, and then straight away you will notice that it will generate what I want. So I don't even have to look at the logics of it. Then I know that it will be correct, which is what I get, right? It's a correct one. Like, say, let's say I want to complete this one, I can click this one, complete, then complete, then complete. If I remove one of them, I just click X, then it will remove one of them. If I want to add new, then I'll just type something in here, and then I press enter, then I get a new item. So this is a workable to-do list app. So you can see the power of Copilots. All you need is one comment on the top, and then it can generate all the codes for you. Okay, so that's what I mean by one comment to rule them all. All right, so this is probably the most interesting part of the Copilot capability. All right, so there are two important facts about Copilot. So the first, the fact number one is Copilot read codes from the top of the page until the position of your cursor, right? So, and then fact number two is, as I already mentioned before, context is everything, right? So when it comes to Copilots, context is super important. If you want to get the most accurate result, you have to feed Copilot the relevant content. Okay, so in the Copilot website itself, it actually mentioned that Copilot relies on file content for the context, and both in the file you are editing, meaning the file itself, as well as the neighboring all related files. Okay, so it will sometimes get context from the other file as well, but based on my experience, right, it is not always the case. Sometimes it doesn't really give you the while it can read some suggestions from the other file, but based on my experience, right, to get the most accurate result, normally you have to put your context within the same file, right? So let me show you why, right? So this is the code that we do just now, right, for sorting the list, for sorting the user list by name and email. Okay, so if I put this function on the bottom, then the Copilot will able to read the context from the top until the function itself. So then if I do this, then it will give me the proper suggestions, like what I showed you just now, right? But so that here, hello, so I have to create that for accurate result. You have to feed Copilot the relevant content. Okay, so in the Copilot website itself, it actually mentioned that Copilot relies on file content for the context, and both in the file you are editing, meaning the file itself, as well as the neighboring all related files. Okay, so it will sometimes get context from the other file as well. But based on my experience, right, it is not always the case. Sometimes it doesn't really give you the while it can read some suggestions from the other file, but based on my suggestion, based on my experience, right, to get the most accurate result, normally you have to put your context within the same file, right? So let me show you why, right? So this is the code that we do just now, right, for sorting the list, for sorting the user list by name and email. Okay, so if I put this function on the bottom, then the Copilot will able to read the context from the top until the function itself. So then if I do this, then it will give me the proper suggestions, like what I showed you just now, right? But so that here I can start to sort by name or email. But if I put these functions on the top, right? Let's say I put it in here, maybe in here, right? Then let's see if Copilot can give me the correct suggestions, which is sort of while you can say correct, but it's not exactly the same as the one that if let's say I put it in the bottom, right? So this is what I mean by the context, right? So if you put it on the top, while Copilots can still give you some suggestions, but it doesn't always get the correct code, right? While okay, so in this part it still works. We can still sort by name and email. It's just that it's not the how do I say, it's like not the best code, right? Compared to if let's say I put it in the bottom. So that's what I mean by Copilot read from the top to the bottom, and this will affect our ways of writing codes, right? Because most of the time we have the habit of putting the function on the top, then the component at the bottom, right? So maybe in the age of AI, might have to change that up, right? To maybe allow the AI to read the context first before we write the whatever function that we need to write. Okay, so there might be some changes on the way we write codes moving forward if we want to get help from the AI itself. Now, GitHub Copilot is still under technical preview. So if you're interested in it, you have to sign up for its waiting list, right? Personally, I have to wait like 4 months before I was granted access to it, and it could be longer or shorter for you. So I will highly recommend you to apply for it right now, purely because it is free right now and it's under technical preview. And when they are ready for launch, I believe we will probably have to pay for it if you want to use it. Okay, so that's why that you have to apply it right now. If you can get into the technical preview, then you can use it for free for now. All right. So in the future, they will probably charge us for that. So join the waiting list and then wait for it until you get access to it. Okay. Now, before I end my presentations, I want to answer this question, right? Are programmers doomed in the age of AI, right? Well, my short answer is no. Copilot won't kill your developer career yet. I say yet. Okay, while Copilot, right, can write a lot of codes, but it doesn't always produce the good codes. As I already show you throughout this whole presentations, right? So you still need have to guide properly in order to get what you want, right? As mentioned in the Copilot website itself, it says that Copilot should be carefully tested, reviewed, and vet like any other code. As developer, you are in charge. That's why it is called Copilot and not Pilot, right? Now, therefore, I believe AI is here to help us speed up our development time, and it's not here to replace us. At least not right now yet, but maybe in the future, but not yet. So we should take full advantage of it while we can. And in fact, right, I would even recommend you to get a direct access to the source itself, get access to both OpenAI GPT-3 as well as Codex. Okay, so what's the difference between these two, right? So GPT-3 is for text generations and Codex is for code generations. So as of this moment, you can get access to GPT-3 API right away since it's in a public beta, but Codex itself is still in private beta. Therefore, similar to Copilot, you will need to request for access. Okay, so I would suggest you to apply for both. Now, I firmly believe that natural language processing, short for NLP, will change the course of human history in the next 10 years, just like what internet does since the beginning of the millennia, right? So therefore, regardless of what technical background you have, you need to join the AI revolutions. Okay, so that's all for my presentations. If you want to connect with me, this is my website and this is my Facebook as well as my LinkedIn. All right, so any questions regarding these presentations?
Okay, any questions from the floor? No? All right, so I'll answer some questions from the online, right? So question number one, right? Does it work better for projects you're trying to build from scratch or existing legacy project? I would say both. So I actually show you some example of like, you can convert some legacy project, like maybe you've done it in class component, so you can actually use it to convert. But of course, there is some limitations that I didn't actually mention on the presentation itself. Is like there are only there's a limited amount of codes that you can feed in API before it come up with the suggestions. So there's actually a limit there. But based on my experience, it's like in normal case you don't write that much of the code in single page because okay, in terms of technicality, they say it's like 4,000 token. So 4,000 token is actually can convert to around 12,000 of character. So it depends on the character you write as well. So sometimes it might be a lot, sometimes it might be a few. So in terms of like, let's say you want to work with legacy projects, and if let's say your code is a lot, then it might take some time for Copilot to get a proper suggestion for you. But if let's say you build from scratch, then it will be much more easier because then your code will be much more, blank, and then it will be fewer codes. Then you can actually structure it properly. So for second question, can we still use intelligence autocomplete from VS Code because most extensions that provide the similar features sort of disable the regular autocomplete? Yes, you can still use it. So in intelligence from VS Code, it still works. In fact, you can even enable tab 9 if you want. But then I don't suggest it to do that because then you have, there will be so many suggestions come around. My my personal preference is that I will stick with Copilot as well as the default intelligence from the VS Code. So the third question is, as the suggestion are retrieved from via network, do they provide API interface that we can build application on top of it? Yes, that's what OpenAI Codex for. So at the moment, it's still in private beta, and I have access to that as well. So all I can say is it's equally powerful as Copilot. In fact, it's almost the same. So it's basically the same engine. The only thing is because so let me give you some history on the OpenAI. So OpenAI actually found by uh, Elon Musk and somebody else, which I don't know who the hell is that. So but then on 2019, right? Microsoft invests like $1 billion in it, and then they want some exclusive right to OpenAI API. So that is why that Copilot have that access to it. So, but then OpenAI, because they want to be transparent, they open up their own API for public use as well. But then you have to request for the access at the moment. But based on their documentations, the accuracy is actually just 43%. Okay, so that's why that I say that they might not be able to replace us as a programmer yet because the accuracy is actually just 43%. But moving forward, I mean, who knows, right? Because the data model is getting bigger and bigger every day. So, any more questions? So last one. Okay. So can we opt in or opt out? Say that you want to trigger a Copilot via tab, will it still provide suggestions? Because at a lot of times you may not want the distractions. Yes, you can actually turn it off. So there's a icon in the bottom whereby you can actually turn it off the Copilot itself. Then it won't give you any more suggestions. So I guess that's all right for the online. Yeah, okay, that's all. So no question up on the floor. All right, so okay, then what are our time? So we are currently on 3 o'clock and 7 minutes. All right, so we'll take a short break, a 5 minute break. Then we'll come back at 3:15. So then for our second speaker, okay? So let's go for a break.
Hey guys, my name is Jian. I'm so one of the co-organizers for React Penang. So we're hosting this event online with Mohit. So hey guys, my name is Jian. I'm so one of the co-organizers for React Penang. So I just
All right, hello guys. This is Mohit, and I'm a CTO and co-founder at Segwits. So we are talking about Fabric today. All right. Okay, Fabric is React Native's new rendering system, right? Um, let's have a brief introduction about it. Fabric is React Native's new rendering system, a conceptual evolution of the legacy render system. The core principles are to unify more render logic in C++, improve interoperability with the host platforms, and to unlock new capabilities of React Native. It has fundamentally changed how the internals of React Native communication works with the host operating system. Let us discuss further in detail, like how actually it changes it brings to you as a developer. Before going into Fabric, we need to first understand what is the legacy system and how does it work. Legacy system works with three threads. It has a first thread as a JavaScript thread, right, where your JS code actually lives and executes. Right? For all of for all of us about while we are working with JS, right, we actually know that like the host platforms are actually different than what we code actually, right? Because as we can see, um, iOS actually understands a different code, right? Similarly, Android understands a different code, right? They have their own host systems, right? That understands, right? So in this context, right, if we talk about like how the JS codes actually compiles and how the JS code actually transcribes into the host, the renderer actually plays a very important role into this, right? So um, when we write a code on the front end in the JS, it actually stay there on the JavaScript thread, right? And then there comes a shadow thread that converts the JS based layout into native layout with help of Yoga. Yoga is basically a layout engine that actually portrays your JS code, converts your JS code and then put it there on the main thread, right? And then there is main thread. Main thread is the main application thread where your app is running. Only this thread can update your UI, right? For every host operating system, for every host, right, there is React Native actually works with different hosts, right? It works with Android, it works with iOS, and even Windows too, right? So in this case, the host operating system, they cannot understand directly your JS code, right? So how does it transcribes, this threading system is actually that actually converts your code from the JS to the host understandable code, right? Let's understand with an example, right? Suppose I want to display this hello fabric text in the center of the view, right? So what different roles, how does these threads play a different roles in displaying this particular text in the screen? The JS thread will actually serialize information in string format and transfer to shadow thread via bridge. It means it converts your JS code into it format that JS code and transfer it to shadow thread via a bridge. There's a bridge that is called as React Native bridge. So once your code is written, once you write this code, right, the JS thread will actually convert this code into a string and transfer it over to the shadow thread, right? Because our ultimate goal is to display this code on the main thread, that is our host views, right? So the first one, the JS thread, deals with the React deals with the React tree, right? And the main thread that deals with the UI actually the actual host views, right? So now the what does this shadow thread do? It acts as an intermediate in between JS and main thread. So the shadow thread actually converts the Flexbox layout into host layout using Yoga layout engine. If you can see, like, I have used the flex equal to 1, right? So all the codes that we write in JS is actually flexbox based, right? So the native systems, the iOS and Android, they don't understand the flexbox, right? They have their own you can say designing patterns. They have their own layout engine, right? So how does this layout will transfer to the main thread? Will transfer to, how does the React views coordinate with the native views, right? So shadow thread actually convert this layout, the JavaScript layout, to the with the help of the Yoga layout engine, converts to the host views, right? And then how does it transfer? It again, what when it converts the flexbox into the native views, it serializes the information again, right? And then you can see it again uses the bridge and transfer it to the main thread. And then the main thread will display it on the screen, as you can see, like Hello Fabric in the center of the screen, as I thought it should display, right? So this is the basic working. This is the main working of the legacy system, right? So now while I was working on React Native, I actually found the React renderer. The React renderer is far better than React Native renderer. So I was feeling like, what is the missing piece of puzzle here? Why the React renderer is working very, very good than very far better than React Native renderer? As you can see, the information is transmitted over the bridge. There are multiple bridges. There are 2 bridges that has been created here, right? So each bridge transfer the information from a particular thread to the next thread, right? So suppose I have to display 5 different images, right? So I just write to display 5 different images on the JS thread, right? I just give instructions to the JS thread, like, okay, display my 5 images on the main thread, right? So how does it do? It has to convert those 5 images into base 64 encoded JSON string, right? And then transfer to the bridge. Just imagine one base 64 string is so big. I mean, so big in text, and suppose if you have to not display 5, suppose it could be more. It could be any number of images that you have to display on the main thread, right? Here is the problem. When you transfer this information of the bridge, it takes a lot of, it takes amount of data. It takes a load on the JS bridge, right? So when you transfer this information, why I was stringifying it, it is a limitation of the render, the legacy system, right? And also, if you see with the React renderer, the web renderer, right? So the React renderer is actually way smarter than React Native. Why? Because it uses the native components of the browser. If you see, you just put an input field on the React JS code. Just write an input field. What will happen on different operating system? On Linux, it displays its native input field. Like it smartly tries to smartly gets like, okay, what operating system is this? The browser will ask the operating system to actually directly communicate that particular component according to the browser. If it is a Mac, it displays the input field that actually is suitable for Mac. If it's a window, it actually, so you see the native, how it is communicating. The web renderer is communicating with the operating system directly, right? But this is not the case in the React Native. This is where we lack. I was wondering, like, while working with the flat list, while working with the scroll views, right, in React Native, there is a huge, you can say, flickering. The flickering was there. And while if you go to native, like iOS, I was working with native, Swift and Objective-C as well. While working with that, we used to use table views, right? Table views was there. So table views actually reutilizes the cells. It directly communicates with the OS. It directly communicate with the host views, but React Native is not doing so, right? So these are actually the limitations. Okay, so as I said earlier, it is very slow to transfer large chunks of data over the bridge. All communication is asynchronous. Now now you will say like, oh, asynchronous thing is good, if it is transferring asynchronously, it is fine. But if you think like the recycler view, it has a limitation as well. It becomes a limitation as well. If a recycler view adapter on Android needs synchronous access to the data, it is rendering to avoid flickering. This is where I thought like, okay, why the native, like the Android native, if you code in Kotlin, if you code in Objective-C, if you code in Swift, it is far better. The rendering is far better for the table views, for the flat list, right? But in React Native, it was not so good. It flickers a lot, So that's the reason actually the legacy system, because the legacy system has some limitations, and those limitations are the reason of it, right? So now what is Fabric giving us? Okay, so the Fabric is unlocking better user experience to us. It improves interoperability between React views and host views. Now, as I said earlier, the React views were communicating with the host views, but there is a bridging, so the information is transmitted in the form of strings. But now with Fabric, it transfers the information, it communicates with the host views in terms of C++. It directly, because the host views are basically communicating in C++. So now the React render is also designed in such a way that it uses C++ to communicate with the host views, right? It provides you synchronous rendering. That was a limitation in the legacy system, right? It also prioritizes the user interactions to provide timely handling, right? It also integrates with React Suspense. Now, React Suspense, concurrent features, SSR, these are far away when you were using the legacy system, right? What is a React Suspense? If we talk about React Suspense, it is again, it is a separate topic. We can have another presentation on it, right? But I'll still brief on it a bit. React Suspense is basically, you can say, a structure where you can display, where the system works in a way like it renders the content parallelly while fetching the data. So let's take an example of a post, right? Suppose you have to display the list of posts, right? And you also have to display the comments on it, right? So comments and posts, those are two different things, right? So comments does not reside with the post, obviously, right? So when you display a post on a feed, right? So the comments you also have to display, right? So that comment is basically, how do you get it? You have to get it in a way where it renders, it fetches the, fetch and render, right? So we don't want to stop our UI. Like, we don't want to hang our UI for a particular thing. Suppose how we are doing currently, what we do is usually we show a big loader. We show a big loader on the screen, or we show the skeletons on the screen for a post, and then user just have to wait, right? But if you say like Fabric, they in Fabric, they provide such features like React Suspense, which don't want the user to wait, which wants to load the app faster and stay faster. It performs in such a way. The React Suspense performs in such a way where user does not have to wait anywhere. User starts the app faster and stay faster throughout the app experience, right? So it actually focuses on enhancing the user experience, right? Similarly, like the concurrent features, right there, and then the SSR, the server side rendering of React Native as well, right? So what are the major benefits of the new render? It provides type safety, right? As you can see, like, it generates build error actually if there are some codes that actually, you can say, don't match. I mean, obviously the host views, they communicate in C++, right? But the React tree is actually in React.js, right? That communicates with React.js, right? So it actually try to communicate both of them by providing type safety, right? It also have shared C++ cores. It means, like, before that, in the legacy system, how it was doing, for legacy system, you have to design, you have to render it according to the host, right? But now it is rendering on because the cores are the C++ based cores, so there is only one generic render. There is only one generic core, one generic logic, that you don't have to prepare separate logics for different operating systems now, because every system operates with the help of C++, right? So it also better host platform interoperability, right? It also works on the improved performance, consistency, and faster startup, right? It also provides less serialization of data between JS and host platforms, right? So let's study about a bit on the Fabric architecture. The React Native render goes through a sequence of work to render React logic to host platform, right? This sequence of operation, this sequence of work is known as render pipeline. And it occurs for initial renders and updates to the UI state, right? So the set of operations that Fabric uses, okay, it is known as a render pipeline, okay? And the render pipeline has three phases, okay? The first phase is render, the second phase is commit, and the third phase is mount, right? So the render phase, what does it do in the render phase? In the render phase, it executes your product logic, right? Remember the JS thread, right? It works on the same principle, but a bit different, right? So it executes your product logic, which creates a React element tree. So it creates a React element tree first, right? And then from that React element tree, it creates the shadow tree, right? The React shadow tree. But the React shadow tree this time is in C++, right? Secondly, there is a commit phase. So after it creates the React shadow tree, right? Once it is fully created, it triggers a commit, right? So what does this commit do, right? This promotes both the React element tree and the newly created shadow tree as the next tree, right, to be mounted, right? This also schedules calculations of its layout information, right? So it performs in the commit phase, it actually performs the calculation. It perform the calculations of the layout, like what has to be drawn on the UI, where has to be drawn on the UI, what are the left margin, what are the top margin, all those, right? So it actually schedules calculations of its layout at the commit phase, right? And then at the mount phase, the React shadow tree, now with the result of layout calculation, is transformed into a host view tree, right? Okay, and then this pipeline execution, when does this pipeline got executed? This pipeline got executed at the initial render first. Suppose whenever the initial render happens, it executes the pipeline. Secondly, whenever there is a React state update, it executes the pipeline again. And whenever there is a React Native render state update, it executes the pipeline again. So these are the three you can say scenarios where the pipeline executes, right? Let's discuss about the workflow of the renderer, right? Suppose this is my component, right? And it has two views inside it, right? I want to display two views inside the center of the screen with two different background colors. One is the red, and another one is the blue, right? The height and width of the same. I mean, I've given the styling, right? So what will initial render do? I mean, how does the three phases work, right? The render, commit, and mount, right? In the render phase, it actually creates the React tree, right? React element tree, right? So if you see, it does not create the React tree for my component. It does not create the React tree for the component. Actually, it creates the React tree for your host views, for your host components, like these three views, right? So it creates a view, it creates a tree, okay? It's create a tree that is known as the React tree, right? And then at the commit phase, while working in the render, while working in the the first phase, it actually create your React tree, as well as the JavaScript tree, as well as it will try to create the shadow tree as well alongside, right? So once it creates the shadow tree, right, it creates a root shadow node, it creates the view shadow node, and it creates the view shadow node again, right? So it copies the React tree into the shadow, you can say the shadow tree, right? So now after the shadow tree executes, right, it creates the layout with the help of yoga. You see, the yoga is still there, right? It uses the same layout engine, right? So it will actually transcribe that layout calculations, it will perform the layout calculation and then display it on the native screen, right? And then display it inform the native components. The layout view has been transferred to UI view for React, for iOS, for Swift, right? And for Android it has a different, right? So this is the initial render, like, and then React state updates. What is a React? Obviously we all know, like, React state update is like whenever we updating the state of a component, right? So suppose in this example I want to change this color from red to from background color red to background color yellow. Say I want to perform a state update, right? So this, whenever I change this color, right, what happens? Like we will see here, like how does it smartly perform the calculations. It does not re-render the whole, it does not re-render the whole things. How? What it will do, it will create a copy for a React tree, for a JS tree first, right? It will create a copy. Okay, as you can see in the React JS phase, it will create that there's a T tree, and then there is a T hash tree, like, so that is a copy tree, right? So it will create a copy of the first tree, the JS tree. It will create a copy of that tree, but it smartly utilizes the 1, 2, and 3. I'm changing only the background color of this third view, that is blue, from blue to yellow, right? So what it does, it will not actually, it will copy the first, second, and third node, right? But it will not copy the fourth node at two places. It will only it will reuse the fourth node at both the places. It will copy the tree, but it will use the fourth node as the same. You can copy the node and reuse the node, right? Because this is the new node that has been changed, right? And in the same way, it works in the shadow tree as well. It copy the tree, right? But it will reuse the 1, 2, and 3 nodes, but the fourth node it will reuse for both, right? It will copy first, second, and third node, right, from the previous shadow tree, but the fourth node, because it has to re-render, so it will use the fourth node. It will point the fourth node to both of the trees, for both of the shadow trees, right? And then the native screen will change the color, right, accordingly, right? And the last you can say phase that actually create that is a React re-render state updates. What is a React re-render? React re-render is actually that comes from the host views, right? So whenever a operating system changes something, right? Suppose you are operating on a scroll view. Suppose, right, you're operating on a scroll view. So you will change your UI. You will change your UI on. You will scroll on the host view, right? So the input will come directly from the host view to the renderer, right? Suppose you want to know the offset of the scroll view, like what is the current offset of your scroll view or your flat list or your whatever scrollable component is there. So that input should be triggered by the host views, but obviously the host view communicates in C++, right? So in that case, and host view will never give it direct access to the JavaScript thread, right, to the JavaScript phase, right, to the trees. So it will directly communicate with the renderer. You can say it will directly communicate with the renderer of the renderer. So it will give the information to the renderer. So it is a React renderer state update, right? And hence it triggers the cycle again, right? Okay, now we were talking about this you can say the benefits of it as well, right? So it is cross-platform it provides a cross-platform implementation, which means the React Native renderer utilizes a core render implementation to be shared across platforms. As I said earlier, it uses core renderer which has been designed in C++, right? So it has been shared across platforms, right? So it does not have to design different, you can say, renderers or you can say different core render logics for different platforms, right? In the previous render system of React Native, the React shadow tree, layout logic, and view flattening algorithms were implemented once for each platform, as you can see. So the current renderer were designed to cross-platform solution by sharing a core C++ implementation, right? And then a single implementation reduces the cost of development and maintenance, right? So this is how it is benefiting us, right? It is reducing the cost of development and maintenance. It improves the performance of creating shadow tree and layout calculation because the overhead of integrating yoga with the renderer is minimized on Android, right? Finally, the memory footprint of each React shadow node is smaller in C++ than it would be allocated from Kotlin or Swift, right? So it also, the memory footprint, the memory is also reduced in case of React shadow node because it is in C++, right? It also provides us view flattening. Now what is view flattening? Flattening is an optimization technique that has been used by React Native Render to work deep layout trees. As you can see in this example I've shared, you see how many views have been created. There is a parent view, and then there's a child view, and then that child view again has another, sorry, the parent view has two child views in it, right? Both are having a margin of 10, right? So what does this view flattening does? It use style diffing actually, so this is actually a technique where the views will be flattened. How it will be flattened? Just see this example. If you see, like, there are this is the first view, there is a first view, then second view, third, and fourth and fifth are the child of third, right? So the second and third are inside the first view, right? They are child of the first view. So but they are both sharing the same styling, as you can see, right? So this view flattening technique works, consider some props like margin, padding, background color, opacity, right? So it actually reduces the views, tries to optimize the, you can say, JavaScript trees, right? Because if you see, like, there are a lot of trees that we have to build, but how does it optimizes? It can see smartly, it can act smartly, like, okay, view 1 has two childs, view 2 and view 3, right? And view 2 is also have a margin of 10, right? View 3 is also have a margin of 10. So it combines this margin, it actually transfer this margin, it actually transfer these styles from two different views to a single view, to a parent view, right? So this is how it actually flattens the React Native trees, right? All right, so this is all about Fabric. So
Hey, thank you, Mohit. Really appreciate you joining the session. But before we post we do have some questions online, and I think there are some offline. I mean, in the physical event as well. But before that, would you just give a bit of introduction about yourself, your experience, and as well as a little bit of your company, just so that we understand you a little bit more.
all right, nice. Okay, so as I said, like, I work as a CTO, obviously CTO and co-founder at Segwits, right? So we actually work with React Native, and then React JS, Vue.js, so we love the JS platforms actually, because it's actually quite fast and growing fast. The community is growing fast as well, right? So we operate with JS platforms, as I said, like, in the back end and front end as well, right? And we also try to operate on the native platforms as well, like Swift and then Kotlin, right? So we are providing services all over, right? And to our clients and all, right? And we actually you know try to build up, try to put our efforts on the on the developer community as well, wherever it is needed, right?
Sure.
So yeah.
That's good. So you just to get some more basic questions out of the way, it's personally from my side is you mentioned that you have touched on Vue.js and even Kotlin, which is more native towards that. So how do you compare when you try to, or even decide when you want to use React Native versus other platforms?
Okay. As I said, like, we have I have experience personally while working with native Objective C, a few years back, obviously. And then I explored. I tried to explore React Native as well, because the community of the React Native is growing really fast, and also it is way better than the technologies that has been used, that platforms that has been used, that were there before. Like, I just don't want to criticize those, but obviously, there were some limitations of PhoneGap, and that are providing cross-platform applications, right? Like PhoneGap and then Cordova were there. I have experience with those as well, right? But those are web-based platforms, and the rendering was not there, not that native actually. But then when I tried to explore React Native, it put a huge impact on me actually. It is cross-platform, and then also the UI that we actually create, the rendering is actually very smooth actually in React Native. And also, while working with React as well, the engine is way fast, and obviously it has a huge demand in the market as well, right? People likes to have their applications on Vue.js and React.js. You can build applications, the single page applications, quite easily, right? So I felt like, the experience while working with the native platform and the React Native platform, the cross platform apps are, there is a difference. Obviously there is a difference, as I said, like, as I said in my presentation as well, like, while working with native, I have worked with iOS native. So while working with Objective C and Swift, that there were no UI lags actually, because that is a native platform actually. So it works very smoothly with the host obviously, because it has been designed to work with that particular platform, right? So those gaps are I can see now. I can envision it, like those gaps are now filling very fast actually, because even when I started working with React Native, at that time the legacy system obviously were there, right? So while we were working with React Native, while um, while it was like, it was having, the versions were there, like 0.58, 0.56. At that time it's very difficult to work with React Native, because there were a lot of dependencies. The market support is, obviously the packages were there, the community is getting bigger but not that much big, right? So we faced a lot of problems while working at that time, right? We had a lot of problems in migrating our projects from 0.59 to 0.60. That is a huge challenge actually. There's a whole lot of the React version, when it changed, the React Native version, that was a huge change. But now it's getting smoother, I can see, right? There were less problems in migrations, there were less problems in upgrading your projects, because it is getting more closer to the native part of it. As you can see, as I explained in this fabric, this is getting way much closer to the native renderer, right? To the host views actually getting closer. As you can see, like, it operates in C++, right? So it is easy to understand, it is easy to communicate with the host views, right? So yeah. So there is a huge support, there is a huge community that is growing for React Native, right? So yeah, it's a better experience, getting very better now.
Thanks. So let's come back to Fabric, which is the main thing that you presented just then. So just a question, because they have been developing this for quite a while now, right? So at this stage, I was considered very stable and production ready, although it's always 0.66 version or whatever, which is still not 1.0. But I'm also a React Native enthusiast. So I like writing React Native. So just the questions for everybody is that is this rendering engine do we have to opt in, or does it come by default from the latest version?
Yeah, from the latest it is coming. From the latest it has to be there. You have to opt it. It comes with 0.66. Obviously, they started this development in, I believe, in 2018. So it's been quite a time now. So I believe the efforts are really good. Actually, they put a really great efforts. So it's been, I believe, in 2022. This is getting live. while you work, while you update your projects on that, it actually upgrades, and it actually works. I believe we might need to make some tweaks into our existing code base as well, while working with this render. And I think it is exploring really great features for us as well. As I said, like I personally felt myself, while working with some you can say the feeds, I mean the flat list. Flat list is a very important feature that every app, I believe, like every app has flat list, right? So while working with Facebook, they even use this in their the React Native Fabric app, the React Native, the Facebook version of the React Native part of the Facebook is using Fabric actually now, right? So it actually bridging the gap, actually, the gap that we have with, while when we talk about cross platforms, it actually bridging the gap in between those, like where we see like a lack of performance. So I would say like this is getting better, and also as you can see, like it is moving closer to the C++, right? So it actually works really nicely with our future apps, I believe.
Yeah, definitely a huge step. I think it just brings. I think it will just bring more people try to love the performance of it. So let's just open up the questions on either online or on the floor. So I know you can see the questions, but I'm just going to repeat it so that the physical meetup can understand it. So from GUI, for React Native rendering, does it recreate a shadow tree each render, or it partially modify the branch?
So if you can see, like for each rendering, for our rendering, it creates the shadow tree. Obviously it creates a shadow tree, but it is not creating it from scratch. It just copies the shadow tree into a new shadow tree, and then whatever changes is there. Suppose for initial commit, obviously for initial commit, as I said, for initial render, it actually has to create the shadow tree. There is no way of it actually avoiding that. But when there is a state change, it actually copies the previous tree, right? Previous you can say shadow tree, and creates a new shadow tree. But as I said, it only updates that particular part. It is getting smarter now, so it is only update that particular node that has a change. Other nodes, it straight away copies.
You mentioned something about deep layout trees, right? So can you like briefly describe to people that don't understand why it is bad?
Okay. So the layout is actually you can say, like, suppose we have a lot of components, right? Suppose we have a lot of, you can say, views inside a particular, our views are getting messy. Obviously, there are a lot of UI. There are a lot of things that we used to put inside, right? So what happens there is, when we draw, so it actually provides view flattening. As I said, why it needs the view flattening? Because it is again a technique that actually you can say flatten your JS, you can say JS trees, right? Because JS trees could be of any number, right? So to reduce the time, to reduce the render time, it actually acts smartly on where it has to, where it has to use how can it reduces the view, how can it reduces the view tree, right? Because the if you see, like, the view trees are there for sure, right? Because you have to create, it will create the React trees first, and then it copies the shadow tree. So you can see here, like, if there are less view trees, there are less shadow trees, so less information to transfer. So how does it flatten? It will only tell you, okay, it will see, like, okay, this information has to be flattened. So what information it flattens? It has set some criteria, like, okay, margins, paddings, opacity, okay, and some other things as well. It take those things into consideration, like, okay, these things I need to flatten. It means, suppose if there is a margin given to, I mean, identical margin has been given to multiple views, right? It gives it uses that particular margin on the parent tree, instead of creating multiple trees, right? So it actually works in that sense, so that it acts smartly on the basis of rendering the elements, rendering the React trees on the shadow trees as well.
Thank you. Let's go on to the next questions from YouTube, from Chong Wei. Say if the React Native app is using Fabric engine and it's using legacy native modules, doesn't it somehow still using the bridge like you mentioned earlier?
So, okay, RNAP is using Fabric Engine and it's so it means suppose we are using the Fabric Engine, right?
Mm.
So we are using the Fabric Engine, and he's asking like it's using legacy native modules, like the modules were
Yeah.
how come native modules are there? I mean, while we are using the Fabric Engine, it actually using the Fabric, you know.
Well,
So I
couldn't be like from other like libraries,
oh,
like
so no, the libraries actually work with the same renderer even in that case too, right? So the libraries actually have to operate in the same way while working with Fabric. If they want to support the Fabric, then obviously they have to work in the same way. I don't think like while working with Fabric, we are still using the same bridging system. No, I don't think so.
There's a follow-up questions regarding to that is, will the legacy native modules benefit from the new render engine, or we have to force to migrate all native modules to the Turbo modules? So I'm a bit lost in this. So if you can, yeah.
Yeah, the legacy the legacy native modules can obviously benefit from the new render engine, right? And I think all the native modules, we need to convert those, we need to migrate those native modules to
Yeah.
to support the turbo modules.
There will just be one. Basically, you cannot like it doesn't make sense to like have mix.
Yep.
I guess that's about it. Unless we have any other questions from the floor. I don't think so. If that's it, hey, thank you. Thanks again. I really appreciate your time.
All right, okay,
I'll
thank
see you soon.
you.
Okay, bye
All right,
bye.
sure. Bye.
All right, so we'll give the mic back to the floor.
All right. Thanks, Mohit, for the presentations. So right now we are in 3:57, right? We'll take 5 minutes break, and then when we came back, we'll start with the third speaker. Okay? Thanks.
Hey, welcome back. So, is Sammy here? So they just bring Sammy in.
Cool.
Hey, Sammy, nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this. Like I said, my name is Jian, and I'm one of the co-organizers for React Penang. Obviously, we're just starting to do this. It's been just 2 years, but again, thanks for doing this. Thank you for your time. Is it early morning in over there?
Yeah, exactly. It's still
Yeah.
breakfast, so I got the virtual background because we got
Right.
breakfast in the background.
That's right. Yeah. So why don't you just give a bit of introduction about yourself as well as maybe your company a little bit, so that the audience get to know you a little bit more before we begin.
Yeah, sure. So I've been a full stack developer for I think around 12 years now. So I've been doing this basically since I was a kid, just loving kind of development and building, and I think that's kind of why we all got into it, right? We just love to build stuff, and I've been more focused on the back end, especially in like the past, I think, 6 years of my career. And I just really love this thing where you build and you get this visual feedback on what you're building, and kind of you get to make the UI really nice and easy to use. I think this empathy for the customer, I think, is something that comes with the front end. So I've worked in a couple of corporate places. Recently, my most recent role is a full-time job at Coin Alpha. So I work there with Jai actually, and he's the one who asked me to come and maybe share some of my experience. So yeah, and yeah, what I'll be presenting today is kind of GraphQL and how the front end development experience changes so much with GraphQL, because I've just found that really interesting, and I've been working a lot with GraphQL the past few years. So I think it's been pretty cool, and I'd like to just share what's cool about it.
Yeah, just started doing GraphQL a bit of myself for a couple of years now. So I'm really interested to listen to what you have to say.
Cool.
Yeah, you can start now. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Is my screen share visible? Just want to make sure everyone can see it. Cool. So what is GraphQL? And I'm sure kind of some of you have worked with it. Some of you have maybe just heard of it. But it's kind of like this new thing. It's really popular. It's getting popular. It's kind of taken over a lot of REST API implementations. And kind of like when you first look at GraphQL and you just go to the website, you don't really see anything there. And this is kind of the problem I had, I think, around 5 years ago when I was getting started with it. I came to the website and I had no clue what any of this meant, because you just see some kind of like almost a screenshot here, and then you do learn more, and you just don't learn more until you actually start writing code. So that's what I really felt. And kind of if you start reading about it, and searching on Google, you'll kind of be told that it's an alternative to REST APIs. And honestly, I think that's true and false at the same time. I think there's more to it. And kind of that's what I want to get into, and to kind of show you why there is more to it. So let me just start off by showing the traditional REST request that we're all used to working with. So so you make a GET request, you click send, and you get just back this data, and you don't really have much control over it, right? You just get back whatever the API said you're supposed to get back. You might have a lot of different requests you're making on your front end, which kind of all return maybe similar information, but then kind of sometimes you lose this consistency. Like over here, we have market underscore ID. Sometimes it might just return market on like a different endpoint. So kind of you don't have this consistency always. So kind of maybe just pointing out some of the things that GraphQL would be able to do better. Now, what does a GraphQL request looks like? So let's compare that. And what I've done is I've got a little bit of code. So I'm going to get this running. This is the first slide. I put this onto GitHub, by the way. I'm not sure if anyone would like to download it afterwards or kind of check it out locally. But if you do, maybe just let me know and I'll post over a link or something. Cool. So slide 1, what is GraphQL? I've just built up the server and it's running on localhost 4000. So let's open that up. And I've used a library called Apollo Server to implement my backend for it. And they kind of give this cool tooling. As soon as you set it up, you don't really need to do much, and it just gives you all of this Apollo Studio kind of cool thing. So we're going to write our request the same way we would write it in Postman. And I think I should zoom in a bit, right? Sorry. Okay, I think I'm just reading some comments on the chat. Apologies, guys. Is that a bit better? Can you see that now, or shall I zoom in a bit more? Cool, thanks. So yeah, this is kind of like the alternative to Postman. So imagine this is for REST. This is kind of like the GraphQL version of it. So let's go ahead and write our query. Don't mind so much kind of the syntax and how it's written. It's kind of very similar to JSON. And let's do query hello. So just a simple query, and we're going to get back hello world. So this is what we sent off, and this is what the server responded with. So that's not very useful. Let's maybe take that a step further. Let's maybe go for products. And as you'll see now, I'm actually building my request in a way that I'm telling the server what I want to receive. And that's what really makes GraphQL kind of really cool, I find. Yeah, I'll get into that in a few more seconds. Let's actually run this. So there we go. I ask for the products, and I get back ID name description. Let me add in another field. Let's get the price. And rerun it, and as you see now, the price appears over there. So this is, I think, very, very powerful, because now the front end can actually determine what it wants to get. And I mean, this can even be improved further. So sometimes we would want to get like the user's favorite products. Imagine that scenario. And let's give that a shot. So I'm going to ask for the users. Let me get the ID and first name. So the first name is Sammy. There's only one user. And now if I want to get this user's products, his favorite products, we can just go ahead and do this. And then again, we can kind of get the same exact structure. So if you'll notice that when I was asking for the products, we had the same fields over here. So kind of this consistency begins to appear in your API, where you define a type called product, and you can reuse that product all throughout your API in different locations. Like right now, I've used it on the user's favorite products. So this consistency, I think, can be pretty cool as well. So there we go. Now I've asked for the user, ID1. His first name is Sammy. That's me. And then favorite products. And there we go. We get this. And as I showed earlier, of course, we can ask for more information if we want that. Like, let's get the stock quantity of those products. And there we go. It appears. So I don't want to do too much information overload, because I think this kind of begins to get confusing if I show like too many examples. So I'll kind of slow it down a bit here. But I just want to kind of point out that there are these features of GraphQL. The front end can ask for what it wants. It can kind of build this consistency across your types you're building. And believe it or not, that's actually very powerful, because kind of the concept with GraphQL is you would define your types for the entire company, not just for one product or like one website. And when you're defining these common types, not only do you need developers to build up this schema, kind of like what these types are going to be, you can also get business people involved. So if you have like a very complex domain you're in, like, I don't know, like banking and financial products or insurance, some of those products can get very complex, and the developer might not know kind of every single field on a financial product, like the yield, or I don't know, like they call it like cap levels and investment returns, all of this. So you can get the business people to actually write, kind of to type out what your schema is going to look like. So now, just to explain kind of why GraphQL isn't a replacement for REST specifically, because GraphQL isn't actually, it's not really a server technology. It's not a library. It's not really anything. All it is it's just a specification. It's just telling you how your server must be implemented. But more importantly, it's telling you that you must type out every single entity which exists in a company. So you want to, I don't know, like let's say you have a product, you want to type it out in your GraphQL definitions, and kind of you begin to get this schema-driven development, where you first define the schema and what the type is going to look like, and based on that, you begin to develop. And in the REST API world, like unless you kind of really have strict rules in place and you have a procedure, usually the backend just ends up building the API, and then you got to ask them questions. Okay, how do I make this request? How do I make that request? But in GraphQL, you're getting this automatic documentation because you're now building your schema. So just to show you an example of what a schema looks like, and I know that probably this isn't going to mean much if you're new to GraphQL, but just to kind of show you that you do define it in advance, and then you build on it. And now this, technically, this file has just become your documentation. So it's really cool because you're automatically documenting your API, and you can just give this to your developers. And of course, like I said, this doesn't really mean much when you look at it unless you're like familiar with GraphQL. But what's cool is you can just go over here and there you go. There's your documentation. It organizes it, and almost every GraphQL client tool for you to test it does it. So I can just go into query, and there we go. It tells me I can ask for hello. I can ask for products. Sorry. I can ask for products. I can ask for users. I can go to mutation. I can update a product. And as you see, like this is actually the functionality. Like this is the implementation of it. And your GraphQL schema kind of is the golden source of truth for this. Let's even go to, oops, I'm sorry. I'm actually not really familiar with this tool, but oh yeah, there we go. So if I go to products, okay, do you know what? I'm going to back out of here. But the cool thing is, this is how I get my autocomplete on this API. So over here, the reason why this appears is once again because I've defined my schema and then built around it. So yeah, you kind of get this this whole workflow now, and you've got this this process in your company which developers and backend and frontend are all adhering to, and now everybody's communicating, and you lose like you don't have any more of this unknowns because everything's documented as you're building it. Cool. So to get back to this, so yeah, some of the advantages of GraphQL, I've talked a few of these. So reduced requests, because as you saw, I can ask for products and users at the same time. So that usually ends up meaning less requests. I can make multiple queries at once. You give power to the front-end developer because he can now ask, she can ask for what they want. Power of entities instead of backend for front-end. So now this is, I think, where it comes to the point where GraphQL isn't a REST API alternative, because GraphQL is just a thin layer between your front end and your back end. Your back end can be any database. It can be a REST API even. It could be another GraphQL server. It could literally be anything. It could even be someone answering a telephone call and pressing a button on it and something arbitrary like that. But the GraphQL is just kind of, it takes all of your concepts in the business, all of your entities, and you just end up documenting it and you type it out. So that's why GraphQL isn't so much of a REST API alternative. It's just a layer in between your front end and back end. If you want to replace your REST with it, you can do that. You can still keep your REST endpoints and have a GraphQL in between the front end and the back end. It allows you to also be agnostic. So I've just built a schema, for example, on users, and I say that the user has an address, and the address would have, a postcode on it. Let's say I'm working with Stripe, and I'm integrating some payment forms on the front end. And Stripe's API might call it zip code instead of postal code. But now I've just abstracted that concept away, and I made it more international. Now my schema says postal code. So anyway, simple example like this where you define what your API is going to look like, and then everything, like every integration you're doing, can be swapped out, can be changed. It could be named differently. Your front end gets a unified kind of interface now. And with REST APIs, traditionally it's always been you make a request and it serves what the front end wants, so a backend for front end. But with GraphQL, you're not really doing that anymore. You're actually asking for entities like users, products, I don't know, reviews, blog posts. You're asking for entities now. You're not really asking for specifically one-to-one mapping of what the front end needs. So I think that's a cool concept, and that kind of scales really, really well. And here's the big win. You have now typed out your API. That's huge, right? Because I mean, you're always going to have a schema for your data, right? Sometimes you'll have it on your database because now you've defined relationships on your tables, and kind of you've added the columns and all that. So right, that's a schema. Or let's say you're taking your data and the front end is interpreting it, right? It interprets the API request, right? So it's kind of schematizing the whole thing, right? You have to interpret that data and to make sense of it. But with GraphQL, you do that at the initial phase. You do that at the start. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes why this is so powerful. So GraphQL, in my opinion, isn't really a REST alternative. It's just supposed to be a layer in between your backend and frontend. There's no assumption of the underlying technologies. It's just documenting your business. Cool. So let me move on to now slide number 2 of my presentation, which is just going to be code. Sorry, there's not really much slides. So we have our backend running, right? So I showed you that. I'm not going to jump into the code there because I don't want to make it too dry. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and run slide. So that's querying on the front end. So as I promised, I was going to say how this improves the front end developer experience, because this is kind of a React world after all we're living in. And let me just show you what my app component looks like now. So I'll just quickly walk through it. I've got my imports, never mind those, some styles here. And what I'm doing is, over here, I'm actually querying for my data. Oh, sorry, zoom in more. Let me zoom in. Cool, how's that? Is that a bit better, or shall I zoom in a little bit more? Cool. All right, so if that's good, I'll continue. So we have over here, use query. So this is, I don't know if you worked with React Query before. It's kind of getting popular these days. But I think React Query was actually inspired by Apollo Client. So I think this is the reason why the naming is very similar with React Query. So I'm going to do use query. I'm going to write out my query. So this is kind of similar to what I was showing in the browser where I was asking for data. So I'm going to ask for my products, and it's going to return me the ID, name, description, price, stock, quantity. Cool. So it's just basically a string of text over there. And the GraphQL server is going to interpret this request and return my data. Of course, along here, it returns all the good old classic stuff like loading or error and a whole bunch of other useful stuff. But I left those out for the simplicity of the example. So, and then we're going to render it in hello world JSON stringify. So let's see what that ends up looking like. And here we go. So very simple. I get back my products, all the data I want, and I just JSON stringified. Let me refresh and show you what, do you know what? I'm very sorry. Probably that's not visible neither. Go. Let me know if I need to zoom in a bit more, guys, or if I should move the screen around. So this is what my network tab looks like. 5. And I'm sorry to keep shifting things around. There, I think it's probably a bit more readable now. So as you see, this is what my network tab looks like. And those are the products. So this is what gets returned from the API. So as I promised, the front-end developer can ask for all the stuff he wants. So let me just remove a few of these fields and let's see what happens. I'm going to save the file. I'm going to go back to my browser. And there we go. It's already on hot reload. So already the data is now less. So as promised, the front-end developer asks only for what she wants. Cool. So this isn't all that great though, is it? Right? I mean, where's kind of our type safety? Where's our TypeScript integrations? Right? I mean, this could be improved a lot, right? Like, what if I type a little mistake over there, right? There's no way that I'm going to know that until I actually run the application and it says, whoops, there was an error saying cannot query field, blah, 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 blah. But that isn't great, right? Because you might make that mistake and you might end up deploying it, right? What if we can check that kind of during build time? So we can stop the pipeline from running and actually deploying the app. So that's possible as well. And this all comes thanks to the power of having a typed GraphQL schema, right? As I showed originally this file, this is telling us what is possible on our API. So there's some really, really cool tooling out there, which I'm going to now run. Sorry, let me squeeze that in. So I'm just going to learn start free. So this is the third slide I'm getting into. And this is called GraphQL CodeGen. And this is really, really cool because what it does is it takes my schema and it says, okay, this is the source of truth. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out my query as a file now. Okay. So it's pretty cool as well. Like I get, if I do that and I hit save, it will do some nice autocomplete for me as well, kind of clean it up. So some cool VS Code extensions already. But yeah, I can write my get products now as a GraphQL file. And my GraphQL CodeGen will automatically take this file. It'll read all the GraphQL files inside my repo, and it'll convert them into a React hook. And that's just so cool. That's really, really cool because what you get then is you get to do this. Import, use get products query from generated. How does it actually create the hook name? So you see the get products here? I'm just going to show you what the query looks like now. I'm going to switch query get products. So it takes this and it just adds a use before and then a query at the end. There we go. That's my hook name. Go back. And over here, I get use get products query. And now I don't even need to write it out as a string inside my React code. Not a big deal, right? But actually it is, because here's what I'm going to get with it. I'm going to do console log over here. I'm going to do data. I'm going to do a question mark and dot. And there we go. This is like magic, right? My VS Code is actually telling me what fields are available on products. So this is an array now. So let's map it. So I've actually already done this down below. So I'm just going to delete this now and skip down here. Let me delete some of these and just show you that VS Code knows exactly what fields are available. And this is just so powerful because you cannot do any more typos. You've now got full TypeScript integration of your API running on the front end. If ever there's a breaking change done by the API, you can actually stop the CI build and basically prevent any breaking changes. And only that, it's just such a nice experience to be able to not have to type these in. So yeah, so there we go. Name, description, price, stock quantity. If I bring my mouse on them, I know name is a string. I know price is a number. It can also be null or undefined, so I get that safety as well. So if I try to do something on this, I need to check its truthiness before. Same with stock quantity. So stock quantity, I said, will always be a number. It'll never be null. You can define that on the schema too. So yeah, you get this thing. And do you know what? Let's go ahead and make a breaking change on our API. So let's say one of the backend developers one day decided to take stock quantity and he wants to name it quantity instead. Right? Because stock quantity maybe doesn't read so nice or some reason like that. So I'm going to hit save. And all of a sudden, you're going to see quite a few things explode on my terminal. And there we go. It's already saying, hey, hang on a second. You cannot query field stock quantity. So this is basically saying the backend has changed, but the front end hasn't updated. So let's go ahead and fix that. So if I now do this, it's not happy with that. If I do quantity, hopefully this should fix it, I think. Oh no, it's still not happy with it. And I don't know why. So excuse me, but I was hoping that would work. Anyway, at least we saw it give us warnings when we broke something by accident, technically. So, and yeah, of course, we get this whole autocomplete on our VS Code. So this is what I meant about the developer experience being great. Let's go over to mutations. This is, I think, another part which shows how great the developer experience is with GraphQL. I'm going to do yarn start 4. And let's open up slide 4. Oh, sorry, I actually forgot to show what slide 3 looks like. But just to show you the outputs table. And slide 4 actually has the same thing. There's also a table there. So there we go. We got our products now. Okay. And now I'm going to show how you update data. So right now we've only been doing read-only. But what if we want to send an update to the backend? And I think GraphQL, again, is really, really powerful on this. And they've done such a good job of envisioning what this front-end workflow would look like. And basically, you know how we were querying for data on GraphQL, they call it mutating. So that's kind of the right version. And let's go to our app and check what that looks like. So I'm going to close all these tabs. And I'm going to show now the simple React component. So I've got my table over there, headers. I'm just rendering the products. And I've got an input over here, a text input, and the button in which I'm going to update the product name. So let me just go back to the front end to show you what that ends up rendering. So we've got our table, our text input, and then update product one name. So basically, whatever I type in here, okay, it's going to update the product name of 1. And it's actually going to, here's the cool part, why GraphQL works so nicely. I'm going to run the mutation, and I'm going to send off to the server. Okay, so it's called use update product mutation. This is once again coming from our generated file. So I haven't implemented any code over here. It's all being done with the GraphQL code gen. I'm going to show you what the mutation looks like now. So it's got an update product over there. So I give it an ID. So which product ID do I want to update and what the new name of that product is going to be. And then I just return the product's updated information. So this is the latest ID, name, description, price, stock quantity of that product. So just to reiterate, update the products and return to me what the latest data is on that product after my update. And as you see, I haven't done any kind of crazy stuff right over here. It's really simple. I just get my mutation. I run update. So this is the actual function to make the server call. So button on click, update, and here are my variables for it. So I'm going to update product number 1. I'm going to give it the new name, which I've typed in. Of course, when we do this, right, we're going to update the server, but we want the front end to update too. Right, so if I write over here, Sammy product, so that's going to be the new name of product 1. Right, I want this field to update after kind of the request is complete. And that's what's so cool about GraphQL. I didn't need to write any of that code, as you saw. Like, I really did not write one line to update this name over there. And guess what? Magically, it's going to happen. So let's go ahead and prove that. So I'm going to do Sammy product, update product number 1. Let me clear my network tab so you see that the network actually gets made. And there we go. I got my response. So the new name is Sammy product for product number 1. And the front end has just magically updated itself. And I didn't write a single line of code to do that. And again, this is one of the beauties of GraphQL. You have typed out your entire schema, as I said, right? You've defined exactly what a product's going to look like. And you've said the product's going to have an ID. And here's the cool thing. So your Apollo client on the front end is smart enough to say, hey, there's a type name called product, and this product has the ID 1. So your GraphQL client is just smart enough to understand that, okay, product 1, its latest name, which I received from a server response, was Sammy product. So, hey, let me go and update the front-end cache and update and re-render everywhere where the product name is being used. And that's just so cool, I think. It really saves a lot of time. I mean, as well, like I didn't really talk about kind of how the Apollo client works or how it works on the front end, but it does a whole bunch of cool stuff where it's managing your remote state. So you don't need to take your response from the server and save it into React state or Redux or anything like that. It's all being done automatically for you with Apollo clients. It's also, as I showed, it's updating kind of everything. It actually does this thanks to cache normalization, which I won't get into now. But if you're interested, just search for Apollo cache normalization. And that's why we had this product update. One other thing I wanted to show, I didn't actually have the time to get around to implementing this and to showing you the demo, but instead I'm just going to show you the screenshots of what someone else has done. I'm going to zoom in, of course. And this is just like, to me, it's revolutionary what you're about to see right now. So you're writing over here your query, right? Of course, you get full autocomplete with your ID thanks to this extension. Shall I zoom in a bit more, by the way, guys? Let me, oops. Let me try that. Okay, that's a bit better. Or is that worse? Okay, I think that's better. So now you get your autocomplete. Cool, wow, impressive. But there's something even cooler coming up in a second. This, of course, requires, having to use Apollo Studio and purchase some of their products and all that stuff. I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling down and trying to find. So this is it. I don't know if you guys can see over here. It says 281 milliseconds. And what is that? That is an estimate of how long this query you're writing on the front end will take. That's just like, that blows my mind, because basically what you've done is you've set up your GraphQL schema in a way, because it's all uniform, right? Like you have a type product, you have a type user, you have a type blog post or whatever. So everything's kind of defined and structured. And thanks to this, you're able to run traces. So kind of how long did the query take? And Apollo Studio, they kind of set up all of this for you. They give you just a very simple CLI. And I think in like 2 commands, you have all of this up and running. And basically every request you make, it gets traced, gets logged. You get a history of it. So now you can actually see how long your queries are taking on average. You get this cool dashboard. And as you're writing your query on the front end, as I showed, I created a GraphQL file. It'll actually tell you how long that query is going to take based on historical traces. So yeah, to me, that just blows my mind. I mean, there's other cool stuff too. Like, let's say you have a schema where you've added some breaking changes to it. And sorry, no, you didn't want to add breaking changes. So what you did is you created a new field and you deprecated the old. And because, again, you're getting these traces, you can actually see how often the deprecated fields are being called. So if they're still being called, you can actually call up the front-end team and say, hey, guys, I saw you're still using this field. We're deprecating that. We're going to remove it in about a couple of weeks. Please transition over to the new one. And before actually removing it, again, you can just check to see if anyone is still consuming that endpoint, because you're getting all of this structured information on it. So yeah, I think GraphQL, there's just so much to it. There's so much to it, more than REST API gives. With REST API, you can probably do all of it too. You can probably do all of that by sending up kind of a lot of tooling around. But with GraphQL, it kind of comes out of the box, especially if you're working with Apollo. Apollo is pretty cool. They have their pluses and minuses, but they're a pretty cool provider of GraphQL tools and services. Cool. So that's it. Hope that was interesting. Cool.
Thank you. Hey, I have a quick question from my side. Is the front end updates? Can you just show me how does it work? Like, how does it automatically being re-rendered?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, basically what's happening is I've got my update product of GraphQL. So I wrote this, and basically I'm just saying that it's a mutation. So this is kind of like the keyword. And thanks to that, we get this hook, which is just coming from the generated file. So I didn't kind of write any of this hook code, and I just get this function. And as soon as I call it, all right, with the variables. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So the data will be updated. I mean, the latest data will be retrieved again from that code gen hook. Is it like the use get product query?
Yeah. Yeah. So the secret is that on my mutation, after calling the update, I ask the server to return these specific fields. Yeah. So that's kind of like the secret there. Yes. So when the backend actually returns this information, the Apollo client is smart enough to say, "Oh, okay, I just received a product ID 29 with this name and this description." So it just goes ahead and updates the cache without asking you. You can, of course, configure that to ask you as well.
I see. All right, I do have a few more questions, but I'll just go ahead with the ones that are asked by the audience. So I think the next one, you can see them, but I'm just going to repeat it so that the audience can tell as well. It's from GIE, your colleague. So have you tried Relay? What do you think the combination between Relay and GraphQL?
Sure. So I've actually just played around with Relay. So I don't have much experience with it. But I think some of the cool things with it is that it has integration with React Suspense and kind of this whole concurrent mood, which we're all anxiously waiting for. Yeah. So I think that's already going to be a pretty cool thing, because what ends up happening is with kind of Suspense and Relay is that as your components tree gets deeper, right? Let's say you have a query and you stop the rendering of your child components until the loading is complete. But with Relay and Suspense integration, you don't get into that thing. So the data is still loading, but your children tree still ends up being rendered, or at least kind of the logic on it is run. So instead of having this waterfall approach of GraphQL queries, you can run them all in parallel as needed. So that's like a huge kind of performance plus you'd get with Relay. I don't know if Apollo client's planning anything for kind of React Suspense integration, but I think I think Relay has some cool things like this. But like I said, I've only really played around with it, so I can't really speak to how great or how bad it is.
Next question is how GraphQL handle security attacks and data permission. Sure.
So it's definitely doable. Like there's no constraints or limitations there. Maybe let me start with kind of like individual fields, right? So let's say I want the stock quantity to not be available to everybody, right? So on my resolver on the back end, I can just check the permissions, and I can say if there's no permissions, return null for the stock quantity. Or I can even do a conditional thing where I say 1 or 0 to show that it's in stock or it isn't in stock. So you can do it on a field level. Then, of course, there's this question of what if I don't want kind of like right now my GraphQL API is open, right? I can write a very super crazy complex query, which could maybe crash my server. So I could, I mean, even just to show you an example now of one of the things I could do. No, sorry. Okay, I don't have an example to show you just now. But yeah, I can write a crazy complex query, and the GraphQL server is just open. But again, with some really, really cool tooling, you can actually do a whitelist of queries. So basically, you have kind of like this config you set up. It goes through your repo, picks up all of your mutations you've written, a lot of your queries you've written, and it'll combine these into kind of like hashes. And then it'll tell your backend server saying, do not accept any queries unless their hashes are exactly this. So if a hacker tries to go and says, give me the users and then the products, and then the users, and the products, and so on, so on, so on. So if they try to kind of end it in this infinitely complex, crazy loop over there, something like that, then it'll, I mean, even if I just add in users over here, it would just say not allowed to run unless it's a predefined query. So there's kind of that kind of security you would handle as well.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that is the for the data permission side. Generally you can do, because you always need to have a resolver to return the result. So that is always going to be the backend server guy will have to handle that. So I mean, they could use like contacts and then to get the user details or their permissions, and then to decide whether the fields can be returned to that particular user. I think. I mean, there's multiple ways. That's one way that I'm more comfortable with. I think. Okay, since you mentioned like the mutations part, something that I have questions regarding to is, so let's just say that just to give you an example is when you have a SQL as a database, then the resolver will, well, I know this is all about front end, but this question bugs me. So if you can answer that, it would be helpful. So let's just say that you have a SQL server, SQL database, and then your resolver is trying to get SQL. So you have two tables. One is foreign to another one. Like you have a foreign key. So for example, you try to get the book, and then you want to get the author information, right? You want to get the book information, and then the book will have a link to the author information, like their name or whatever. But what if, as a front-end developer, if I just want to get the book information, I don't necessarily need the server to call another operation. So is that something that GraphQL can handle, or I don't know, just something that yeah.
Yeah, it definitely can actually, and I know exactly the problem that you're talking about, because it's a very common one in the GraphQL world, right? You'd expect that kind of it might unnecessarily make requests here and there, but that's all solvable because it kind of starts off with having a resolver for your fields. So on products, I might say, so let's say the stock quantities lives in a, you know what? Let me even go for a more crazy example. So imagine this is going to go to Contentful, right? So let's say I'm using Contentful to save all of my product descriptions. The ID and the name is going to come from the database, right? So I think this is kind of a nice example where if the user isn't asking for a description, we don't want to make that like unnecessary and maybe slow request to go to Contentful. So you would have field level resolvers. So you would say, okay, for the ID, go to the database, get that. For the name, go to the database, get that. And for the description, go to Contentful and get that. And just because you've done that, if the user hasn't asked for description, that resolver would never get run, hence it wouldn't go. But now there's kind of this other thing where, so as you said, kind of with joins, right? Sometimes we want to have, like you might end up kind of making a lot of requests to the database. So let's say I want products, and then let's do product comments. Like, you know how you have the comment section on YouTube, for example. So we do user comments and I don't know, text and user. Right. So over here we'll get all the products, and now we want to kind of make sure we don't want to make one request for every single user comment, because that would be just like really, really inefficient. But as well, we don't want to unnecessarily make a join. So this is actually solved pretty simply with what's called data loaders. So data loaders are really cool. There's maybe like a very small learning curve to them, but basically what they do is they allow, on a request level, caching. So let's say you ask for products 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? You don't want to make 6 MySQL requests. You just want to do 1. So the data loader allows you to do that. It's every time a product gets asked for, it caches those IDs for like a couple of 100 milliseconds, and it says, okay, now I have all the product IDs I need to fetch. Then it goes and makes the request. So if you've got a subfield like user comments, you can do the same thing over there. So you can say, okay, I want to get these products. Once that's returned, then it says, okay, now I need to get these comments. So kind of you don't run into any performance issues over there. And as well, you don't unnecessarily make the request. So sorry, I think I explained it really, really badly, but
Yeah. I use data loader as well, but I've never used the field level query. I mean, something that we should definitely explore.
Yeah. I think like those field level resolvers, I find them really helpful at times for those performance kind of things. You know.
Another question also from my side is just the typing itself. So it's very common, you know, API has their own lives in a repository, a separate repository, and then front end lives in another repository. So how do you generally share the typing? Like, because all of the types will be in the schema and then eventually being populated using from your by your code gen, right?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, how do you like share the code, share the type? Do you just, I don't know, like I'm open to, I'm all ears.
Cool. So I think there's a couple of approaches, and it really depends on like I think the product and the team and like personal preferences even. So one approach is to kind of to save your schema into a separate repository completely, and that's just your schema definition. And then your front end would download that schema using a CLI command. And same with your backend repository. So that would also download the schema, and then you would take that schema and stick it into GraphQL CodeGen. That's one way to do it. And that kind of allows this schema-driven development where you create PRs to update the schema, and then team members can comment on it, and it becomes a collaboration. So I think that's a pretty cool way. Another way is you can also just run your kind of schema like publicly, and your GraphQL CodeGen can pick up your schema not from a local file but from a running server. That's another way to do it. My personal taste, I think, would be a mono repo. I just keep everything all in one repo, and I develop the backend in the same repo as I'm developing the front end, and then that just makes it really easy because then you don't have to worry about ever having an outdated version. But like I know that some people do find that unorthodox sometimes, so I think it really matters. But I think those probably are the 3 interesting options.
Yeah, we were using one of the projects that we're using monorepo like it so far, but another projects we have to split them because of the size and just a matter of so. So I think I'm going to try. You know, right now what we're doing is we copy and paste a lot of stuff, so it's not good. It's not good, but livable until the product scales too much. Well, see if we have any other more questions from the floor or even online. If you don't have, then if you guys have any more questions, you can always post it on the group, on our Facebook group, and then we'll try to be as responsive as we can. All right, thank you, Sammy. Really nice to meet you, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me on. See you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye. We'll pass the mic back to the floor.
All right. All right. Okay. Thanks, Sammy, as well as Jian, for hosting both of the speaker. So we are at the end of this meetup, but before I end, I would like to invite representative from Digital Penang to talk about some initiatives that DB is launching. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this space. Digital Penang is a new agency under the state of Penang. We have 4 pillars that we are going to push, drive, track, plans, and programs and initiatives in line with Penang 2030. The 4 pillars is digital infrastructure, digital economy, digital governance, and digital community. So where I'm from, I'm helping the startup ecosystem, building startups and making sure they stay in Penang. And so we have several partnerships with some of the cloud providers and software as a service companies. So if you're interested with this free cloud credits, you can come talk to me after this. For Freshworks, which is a CRM or HRM, it's got a lot of services. We have free cloud credits up to $4,000 with AWS. It is a Amazon Web Services. We have cloud credits under the AWS Activate program up to $5,000 over 2 years. So if you're interested in some of those, we'll talk about this. If not, you can send me an email at alan.lin@digitalpenang.my, alan.lin@digitalpenang.my. There. All right, thank you so much. I'll pass it back to Nathan.
All right. Thanks, Alan, for the introduction of DP and the initiative. So if you have any questions regarding to the initiative launched by Digital Penang, make sure. Okay. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Just email Alan with all the questions you have. All right. So I guess this is the end of our meetup for today. So I want to thank everyone for attending, whether you are attending physically or online. So I would like to apologize if, let's say, we have any insufficient places that we are not doing good enough, because to be honest, we actually do simulcast the first time. So this is actually a brand new experience for us as well. But hopefully the next time, then we will be able to improve and do better. All right. So okay. So that's all for our sessions. So yeah, bye.